You join me here today at Woodlands Lakes in Thirsk, and I wanted to run through my approach to method feeder fishing on open water venues like this. Now, the method feeder is as simple a tactic as it gets, and obviously it's absolutely deadly, but you need to get the simple things right to make the most of this brilliant tactic. So what I want to run you through today is how to go about preparing your bait, how to go about feeding, where to fish in your peg, and how to make the most of this deadly method. So I'm going to get on with a bit of fishing now, and as I fish I'll run you through exactly how I approach it. Right, when it comes to tackle choice, dead simple for the method feeder. First of all, you're looking at a rod, 10-foot rod generally for most carp fishing for me. My choice, the Aero X7 precision feeder 10 foot. Now this rod's got a lovely soft top section, cushions all the lunges of the fish. I'm not going to rip the hook out. Bottom section's a bit stiffer, a bit more powerful, so when the fish are sort of charging off a little bit, I can give them a little bit of pressure to turn them, get the head up to net them. Now, moving on from there, my main line is 0255 Shimano Eggs Age. Now, that sounds very thick, but it's there for a reason. It's not going to let me down. When I'm casting all the time, casting heavy feeders, fish might run up against something, my line's not going to get damaged. I can't see any reason at all to use anything lighter and thinner. I'm not casting a long way, so I don't need the thinner line for my casting, and I've just got no advantages to using something lighter. Down from there I come to my method feeder. Now, I use two types of method feeder. The first one I use is a small Preston flatbed. That's what I use if I'm casting up to islands, catching lots of fish, casting regular, building my peg up with my feeder. Today, that's not what I'm aiming to do. I'm aiming to cast my feeder in, get it to the bottom, get my nice pile of bait, and sit and leave it in. And it could be in up to 15 minutes. I'll be relying on loose feeding pellets to draw the fish into my peg. So that small Preston feeder for me just doesn't quite give me a big enough volume of bait. If a few small fish come in, pick a few pellets off my feeder, there's not going to be a great deal of bait left there. So I move on to a small Drennan feeder. Now, it's probably half the size of the Preston again, holds half the amount of bait again. And for me, that's just the right size pile of bait for when I'm leaving it in. A few pellets might get ate by small roach or skimmers, but there's still a volume of bait there with my hook bait left to catch a carp. Now below that I've got my hook length, and this might sound like it contradicts my main line a little bit, where I'm saying something heavier isn't going to let me down and there's no advantages using something lighter. Hook lengths, I'm convinced the lighter I can fish, the more bites I get. And I go for 0152 Shimano Slick Silk. Now my reason for using something lighter is the lighter the main line you use, the more supple it becomes. And that stops your hook length wanting to straighten out and pull your bait out with the ball. Now Slick Silk's a very supple main line anyway, but in that lighter diameter than what most people might use for big carp like this, I just feel it gets me more bites, it keeps my hook bait where I want it, and it's not going to move away from my feeder. To finish it off, a size 16 KKM, razor sharp, every fish that touches that's going to hook itself, just what I'm looking for. So nice simple setup, but everything has its reason and everything does a job. So that setup's never going to let me down, and it does everything I want it to. So when it comes to feeding, it's all about creating competition in your peg, same as any other type of fishing. To do this, for me, you need to be feeding regular, making a bit of noise, having some bait falling through the water, which causes carp to compete with each other. It's not all about constantly feeding. What I like to do is feed my pellets in a quick succession, maybe 3 or 4 times. So I'll feed anything between sort of 2 and 8, 3 or 4 times, make a little bit of noise, and then I'll leave it for maybe 3-4 minutes. On harder days, could be 7, 8, 9 minutes, and then feed again. Make a lot of noise in one go, cause a bit of commotion in your peg, and get them curious carp looking about. You always feel you've got your feeding about right when the majority of your bites come as your loose-fed pellets hit the water. I think that's a real good sign that the fish are in your peg and they're competing. Now, if I was fishing up to an island and building my peg up with my feeder, I'd be casting really regular. But I'm waiting for the carp to find my bait, so I need to leave my feeder in longer. So I tend to leave my casts around 12 to 15 minutes. Hopefully I'll have a bite long before that. But that's where the bigger size feeder comes in. I've got myself a decent pile of bait. It's sat there on the bottom in amongst that loose feed. And I'm loose feeding bait in order to get the carp to compete. And that little pile of bait I've got around my method feeder leaves the perfect target for a carp to find, pick up, and I'll hook it. For me, the number one most important thing when you're method feeder fishing is preparing your bait correctly. What you're looking to achieve with a method feeder is what I would call absolute perfect presentation. A little pile of bait with your hook bait right in the centre of it. Now, if you don't get your bait correct, your bait will come off the feeder as it hits the water as the feeder's falling, and you can't achieve that presentation that you're aiming for. And what you're basically left with is a bomb with a short hook length, which obviously isn't correct. So first of all, preparing your bait. Loads of different ways of doing it. For me, I get my pellets the night before, cover them in water so the pellets are only just covered. There's a few pellets protruding out the top. I put a lid on them, put them in the fridge, and that is it. The next morning, I take them out of the fridge, take them to the bank with me, put them into a different tub to separate them, and you're left with a perfect pellet to put around your method feeder. The next thing to consider is how you load your feeder. Now, you'll see a lot of people just drop the hook bait in the mould, fill it with pellets, press the feeder in, and that's it. And that can be great when you're catching loads of fish, maybe casting to islands, catching small fish, F1s, little carp. But for this type of fishing, for big carp, you need to put a little bit more thought into it, and you really want to be burying your hook bait much deeper in the ball. So as the feeder breaks down, your hook bait then becomes exposed, but it can't roll off the side as it sometimes does when it's sat on top of the ball. If you do that, you're then going to be left with your hook bait at the side of the pile of bait, which you'll still catch fish on, but by burying it deeper, your hook bait will stay in the centre of the pile, achieving much better presentation, almost like that perfect presentation I spoke about with a real nice pile of bait, your hook bait right in the middle. Now, once you've got your bait prepared correctly and your hook bait in the right place, that's achieving the presentation you're looking for. But the next thing I look at is my hook bait. I only really use two, and they're to again achieve that presentation and keep the hook bait in the middle of the pile where I want it. So my hook bait's plain old 8mm pellets, same as what I'm loose feeding, and the other hook bait I use is one of these 8mm Bandem sinkers. Now, my reason for using them two hook baits is they're both very heavy and they'll stay exactly where I put them. They're not wanting to waft about, they're not wanting to roll off the feeder, they just stay put right where I want them, right in the middle of that pile. Again, giving me that perfect presentation. So I've had a lovely day today at Woodlands, and I think I'm going to make this my last fish. But I hope you've all enjoyed the video and picked up a few hints and tips along the way. We're trying to get out on a bit of a more regular basis now, so if you just subscribe to the channel and keep your eye out for any more videos. Hopefully you join me again next time. And what a lovely fish to finish the day.